Hi, my name is Dr. Tom Barnett. This is Family Life Success Ministry. Today we're going to be looking at the technical science of art and grant writing. Family Life Success Ministry has 3 divisions, and the 3rd division is grant writing training and preparation and delivery of the service for nonprofit organizations and research and development organizations and educational organizations. So let's get started. This is part 1. There are 4 kinds of grant proposals. There's bad ideas and bad proposals. There's bad ideas and a good proposal. There's a good idea and a bad proposal, and there's a good idea and a good proposal. So those are your 4 types of proposals. Where do you submit proposals? Well, individuals. Most people don't think of submitting a grant to an individual, but basically what you're doing is you're asking for money. You're asking for a donation. That's a very common occurrence, and there are ways to do that in a very professional way through writing a grant. Private foundations, corporate foundations, public foundations, city and county agencies, state agencies, and federal agencies. And in nonprofit circles, federal agencies do give money, but it's a very rare occurrence. And the kinds of grant proposals, you can do building and renovation proposals, capital campaigns, equipment proposals, endowments, development, research, and technical proposals, education, and social. Those are just summaries of a vast number of grant proposals available and grants available. Good quality proposals. What goes into a good grant proposal? Well, first off, it has energy. You've told your story better than everybody else. You have 1,000 people applying for a grant, and they all have need, they all have wants, they all have need of money, services, and technical support. What makes yours better than the other? It is the story. It is the energy that you bring to your proposal. The experience. Experience is a big part of being able to manage and handle assets that you are given. The confidence that if we give you a grant for $25,000, that the grant money goes to the use purpose, to the idea, to the dedicated thing. Clarity. You may understand what you're saying, but you may even be speaking the same language. How many times in a relationship do you say, well, our problem is communication. We're speaking the same English language or Spanish language or African language, but we don't understand one another. We don't communicate well. Clarity is a big part of what makes a proposal acceptable. The benefits. What are the benefits to the community? What are the benefits to the people being served? What are the benefits to the organization? It has to be a good marriage and a good fit for a grant. Comprehensiveness. Do you have a plan? Is it comprehensive? Is it easy to understand? And then the effectiveness. What are you doing that's unique? What are you doing that's different? What are you doing that is going to make a change in people's lives? So when you come up with a program plan for a grant, you start off with a reasonable scope. You come up with a plan, a concert. You narrow it down to a projected goal. And with that projected goal, then you come up with identifying the grants that you need. Can what you're trying to do be accomplished? Is it realistic? Do you have enough time allotted in the program? Do you have enough supervision? Is there enough personnel to execute the new plan? Or are you so tight already? I don't know any program, I don't know any nonprofit program in the world that has enough money, enough personnel, enough of anything. There's always a need for more. There's always a need. But can you accomplish what you say you're going to do? Are you going to do with the money what you say you're going to? That's a big part of what a grant asks. There's a direct tie between your program problem and the program solution. If you're going to open a recovery program, if you're going to fund a recovery program for alcoholics, then you need to identify the area population that are alcoholics and identify the need of the area population that are alcoholics, and then you need to have a plan to reach those alcoholics. And just having a building is not enough. That's not a plan. You need to have a reasonable idea. Okay, the last part of part 1 is the key components of a grant proposal. First, you have a mission statement. It should be short, direct, and it should pertain to the grant, not the overall mission statement of your nonprofit organization, church, soup kitchen. It is the mission statement that pertains to this grant. So you're writing or you're concentrating on what we're going to do with this money and what this new program is. The history of the organization, your historical credibility. And you may not have always been a 501c3 or an organized program. Sometimes a food pantry just starts in the back of a trailer or a garage, but that's your history. That's how you started, and this is where you are. And that all needs to be included. The organizational information, what makes you who you are legally. The problem statement, stating the problem clearly, stating the need clearly. The program plan, your table, your goals, and your objectives. That's a good place to start with your committee or your individual. Your goal, what's your goal? We have alcoholics in our area. We want to start a recovery program. The program is going to look like this. We're going to have a building. We're going to have a dedicated time. We're going to have this much money allotted. We have this much personnel to clean it up. We have this much coffee. It's a non-smoking. It is whatever the program is, it's okay. Budget. What is the budget? Each and every program in your request to a grant needs to have a very clear budget request. Some of them are very detailed, and some of them are very simple. It depends on the complication of your program. And your tax, your federal income tax roll, your nonprofit status, your Dun & Bradstreet number, a list of your board of directors, documentation of your 501c3. All of these things go into a grant package. Do they get read? Usually by the proof checker, by the person who is the doorkeeper of the grants. Do the foundation board of directors, do they sit down and peruse through thousands of grants? Absolutely not. So one of the first things that happens if your grant package is incomplete, then it gets file 13 right up front. And we have a tendency to ignore blanks when we're filling out forms. Their blanks were put there by a board of directors as a stop check. They don't know anything about you. They don't know anything about your ministry. Everything they'll ever know about you at this point is in black and white on a piece of paper. So it needs to be very concrete, very credible, and very clear. This is the end of part 1. Hi, this is part 2. My name is Dr. Tom Barnett, and this is the technical science and art of grant writing. And it is much a science as it is an art form. So let's begin with the capability statement. The statement is that we have the staff who is trained to facilitate or fulfill the grant, or we have the contractors who are capable of facilitating the grant money. In other words, if you give us a grant, then we'll go out and find people. That's not how the program works. You have an ongoing program, and now you need to expand the program, or you have a need within the program. One of the ideas you need to clearly understand is the reason you're asking for help is because you need help. That's something you don't need to be embarrassed about. It is perfectly acceptable. They understand why you're giving them a grant. It's not because you have an overabundance of funds or technical support, but you have a need, and you have a plan to utilize that money. So, you have capable volunteers. Volunteers can be part of that program. In fact, in many nonprofit organizations, volunteers in churches, organizations, societies, foundations make up a large portion of the working population that make it happen. That body of believers, that body of Christians, they make it happen. But the training of the volunteers, training for childcare, training for recovery, training for counseling, training for English as a second language. How do you plan to get the volunteers up to grant qualifications? Do you have a plan? We are capable. You have capable board members. You have credible, capable board members who are actively involved. They're not just meet once a year and don't have a passion for what you're doing. and they don't have a vision for implementing the grant foundational money. We have established an advisory board also. That's made of community people. You know, the community idea is big when it comes to grant writing, and we're going to look at that a little closer. So you need credibility, capability, feasibility, and the importance of the project. You need to tell your story better than the next guy. You need to impress upon them the absolute necessity of having this grant to make all the difference in the world, in the community, and the lives that surround for years to come. Because essentially, grant money is an investment. That's why grants are given for young people and old people and in between people's college education, because everybody recognizes that grants, like Pell Grants, going into education is a statement for the future. It is a qualification to help an individual become successful in the future, not in current time. So, what do? Well, the first thing I do is I pick up the phone and I call the foundation that we're approaching for the grant. I become friends with the grant funder. I go to their charity events. I go to their balls. I go out and shake hands and kiss babies with their interest. I find out who's on their advisory board, who are their board of directors, and plug into their infrastructure, because it's a lot easier to hand a friend a package for a grant than it is just to put a stamp on one and mail it and hope something happens. Most people never bother to pick up the phone and say, hey, I'd like to submit a grant. Tell me some more about your organization. I'd like to be interested. These are successful people who have done successful things, and they like it when you take an interest, especially if you're asking them for money. Well, you know, you need a letterhead. You need to look professional. You need a board of advisors, and they need to be set up from the community. They don't have to be voting members of your board, but they do need to be community interest. Grants love people who are community involved. You must never ask a grantor for the entire funding. That is an absolute no-no. It never comes. They come in the form of 50-50 grants or matching fund grants or 85, 35, 25, whatever, you know, whatever the percentages are. And they like to see who else is participating. They want to see other people participating. And it doesn't all have to come in money. It could be a computer company has donated 10 computers for your after-school program, and these computers are going to be used for GED classes for people who don't have high school diplomas. And there's also a ESL software, and you need funding to fund a teacher to teach ESL after school for adults and children. So it can be a combination of grant requests from many different places. And you can go to one primary source, but all grant foundational funders, when you're asking for money, they want to know who else you have involved. They want to understand that clearly, that they're not the lone wolf in this. Letters of support and endorsement are very important, but contradictory to what you think, you never, ever, ever get letters of support from politicians, police officers, people who are politically involved, union officials, anyone who would smell of a political agenda or would have anything to do with that idea. So it's not important. Could they be on your board of directors? Sure, absolutely. But endorsement letters, absolutely not. You want community leaders who are non-politically associated, or at least not in this capacity. The other thing is you should relate the letters to the problem. They should be involved. The letters are not just you're a great guy or you're a great organization. The letter should say, I feel like this would make a difference in children's lives if we had an ESL program, because we have so many kids, and just on and on. You need to keep sign-in sheets of your board of directors' attendance and your community outreach. Take pictures too. This will help you stimulate the program. Also, everybody at that table, all these community advisors and all these community leaders know somebody who has money within the local businesses and in the local industries that have foundations who are willing to give grants. So, the human interest story is big, because you don't borrow money from banks, you don't borrow money, You don't ask for money from people. You do it from individuals. Institutions are not who you're dealing with. Every institution, every foundation has individual board of directors who sit there. And the board of directors are not who you think they are. They're not Bill Gates. They're not the doctor who gave the money or the professional athlete who gave the money. They gave the directives. They said, I'm going to give this money, and I want that money to be used for the College of Biblical Studies. I want the money to be used for this church. I want it to be used for this soup kitchen and soup kitchens around the nation, around the world, or the starving children in Peru. I want the grants to go there. So the people who gave the money gave the strings with the money, and then they gave the corporate board directives, and so it has to fit within that corporate board. But the people who make up the board, you have the lady who likes to do social events. She likes to throw parties and fundraisers. That's what she lives for. You have 2 or 3 people on there who are retired and they still want to be involved in missions and charities and things. You have a housewife who got asked because she's the husband of one of the people who gave money, and she has time on her hands and she's interested in the program. Do they meet every day? Absolutely not. It's not a paid job. Sometimes they only meet once a year. So grants will open up in January 1. They'll close January 15. And if you miss the deadline of getting your information in and the proofreading time, because the board members, they get 1,000 grants that are 50 pages apiece. They don't sit there and read those grants. They read the summary. And the 10 that they're handed by the person who administrates the fund. Wow. So why is it important to get to know the board members? Because each board member, on most occasions, has a right to present grants. So Miss Smith can bring a grant to the table and pass them out and say, I would really like for you guys to consider this. And by and large, that's a really good way to do it. So knowing the board members, knowing the advisory board members, knowing the people who support the foundation is critical to get funding. And that's what we do at Family Life Success. This is the end of part 2, and we'll continue in a minute with part 3. Hi, my name is Dr. Tom Barnett. This is part 3 of the technical science of grant writing and the art of grant writing, and it's as much a science as it is an art. Well, so where's the money? How do you get to the money? 98%, 95 to 98% of all foundational type money is given to nonprofit programs, because nonprofit programs administer money well. And so foundations, matching funds, rural foundations, corporate foundations love to give to places like Habitat for Humanity, the Heart Association, the Leukemia Foundation, the AIDS Foundations, the Art Society, because these are nonprofit-driven programs that are used to administrating funds. Now, does that mean that they don't look at religious organizations? Absolutely not. In fact, the majority of funding, 75% of all funding, go through some type of religious organization or parachurch organizations. That's who does schools and soup kitchens and programs and rehabilitation programs. I mean, it's cloaked under Jesus. So that's who gets the money. So don't be afraid because it's a secular foundation to ask for the money. It's really, really critical to understand. They like the credibility. They like the moral statements. They like the ethical codes. They like the structure and the construct of religious organizations. And they like the history and the stability. So you've got a lot going for you in getting grants. Now, community collaboration is where most nonprofits fall short in a lot of ways. Some not. Schools are a lot better at community collaboration. They become partners with Walmart. They become partners with the computer place, at the plant place, the cleaning folks. They become partners in the area, and it becomes a really, really good program. I'm talking about private schools as well as public schools. Now, for most nonprofits, though, they don't understand the credibility of that. If you're dealing with Billy Bob's Soup Kitchen on the far north side, and you send a $25,000 grant up to New York, And they've got everything in there except the problem is, and they've got credibility, they've got a good story, they've got stability, they've got pictures, but the foundational board up in New York is not familiar with Texas, and they're not familiar with the north side of Texas, and they're not familiar with Billy Bob's Soup Kitchen. The Red Cross they've heard of. Billy Bob's Soup Kitchen, although it's a good work, has not much credibility. But if Billy Bob has sent out letters to Nike and Johnson & Johnson's and Phillips Petroleum and any number of places, and they've gotten baby powder and shampoo, and they've gotten soap, and they've gotten stuff. They've gotten some computers from IBM. They've gotten stuff. When you fill out that grant form, you can now put on there, you have received grants in the form of these things from these very credible Wall Street corporations and known businesses. So the nice lady who makes the final vote up in New York understands that if Nike is willing to give you money or give you shoes, and Johnson & Johnson is willing to send you stuff, that you must be credible. You have some credibility there. So becoming community partners and becoming partners with people is vital to your credibility. It's extremely important for the endorsement idea. So that helps a tremendous amount. So one of the first things that I do in working with people is we work on their community collaboration. Now, actually putting the grant together, how do we find the money? Where do we find the money? Well, we have search engines, and these search engines are broken down into education, into rehabilitation and education, and that type of stuff, and research and development. And then we have foundations, and so we pay money, and we type in the parameters of the need. We need money for the soup kitchen, for pregnant women, for health education classes, for prenatal care. And we get real specific. And then it spits out all this information, spits out all these grants in a actual real-time thing. And then we have to proof through the grants and decide this is a good grant, bad grant, good grant, bad grant. And then at that point in time, we would come back to an organization, to a church or an organization, and say, these are the grants we found. Now, we need your permission to proceed. But that's only after the master grant has been written. The master grant is your primary document. That's the one that contains all your static information. Static information are things that don't change. Your address isn't going to change. Your phone number isn't going to change. Your 501c3 date isn't going to change. Your Dun & Bradstreet number doesn't change. You have things that are fixed information. Now, once you have a master grant, your history, your story, your need, once all that's done, then you have to tweak it to each grant, because different grants have different grant languages they want to hear. And so that is an educational process and an educational curve. There's actually dictionaries and encyclopedias for grant writing, so you can look up terms, because they use terms all the time that we're not even familiar with. We have to look them up so that we're answering the question correctly so it isn't automatically rejected. So yes, it's complicated, and yes, it's simple, but let me say this. If it was as simple as filling out a form, then everybody in the world would get a grant. So most people try to fill out forms, they send it in 2 or 3 times, and they're rejected, and they get discouraged and quit. Well, there's 2 ideas in this. In capital campaigns in churches, it's much easier to bring in an outside evangelist, an outside speaker to request money than it is to use the pastor to request money. Not that the pastor can't, but a lot of times this aids in the process. So for us asking for the money for you is very good, because they know that we've put together a good grant for you. We've put together the right numbers, the right things. We've told the story right. We made sure that every blank is filled. You know, I have a barber, I have a CPA, I have an attorney, I have 2 or 3 attorneys. I have a dentist, I have several doctors, I have a guy that cuts my hair, does my pool, I have a guy that does my yard. It's not that I can't do some of those things. I sure don't want to do my own teeth. But I can tell you, just because you own a dance hall doesn't mean, you know, you need to be the only person out there dancing. And in that analogy, just because you like to dance doesn't mean that you need to own a dance hall. So most business owners, educators, and pastors and directors and leaders of these nonprofits are very good at what they do. They're very, very good at what they do. But they don't have time because their plate's already full with taking care of everything they have to take care of. There's never enough time, money, and energy. And even if you assign it to somebody else, it doesn't mean they have the passion or they even care about how or why to put together a grant. So in doing grant writing, a lot of times you either need training, professional training, or you need assistance, one of the two. And so we can do both for you. We can come in and train you and your staff, or we can provide the grant services for you. And I'll be glad to meet with you on an individual basis. My name is Dr. Tom Barnett. Thank you for your time. I hope this information was useful. God bless you, and have a wonderful time grant writing.